Hello, my name is Emma Maggs and this is Wildfemmes. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, a wellness advocate and a certified integrative nutritional health coach with a huge passion for sharing her journey and its learnings. Hailing from Denmark, Caroline Groth landed on our shores just over 12 years ago and called the iconic Bondi Beach home. Having packed a whole lot into her life, she vulnerably shares the good and the sometimes tough as she navigates professional, personal relationships and her health holistically. Her ethos is to nurture her body and mind inside and out and to move thoughtfully in every way. I'm excited to chat with Caroline and delve deeper into her story as I really think she'll inspire you. Caroline, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited about having a little chat with you.
100%. You and I have the ability to really talk for hours, so I'm going to just dive straight into it. Now, I do want to tap in further to your past, but I wanted to ask you, being someone who is so front of mind on Instagram and social media, what do you think people think you do?
I think that people think that I think that people think that all I do every single day is have infrared saunas, go for walks, train, cook, take a photo, pop it up, and then that's pretty much it,
I mean, that would be the dream, right?
That would be the dream. Unless you are someone that purely relies on generating an income from being, for the lack of better words, an influencer. I'm really a strong opponent of that word. I don't think that people know what it entails and what your life looks like and actually how much hard work it takes to work with brands, liaising with brands all the time, creating content. You have to be hair, makeup, light, editing, filming, videographer, creative concepts. You've got to be an art director. There's so many hats that you wear, and it takes such a long time. And also being consistent in like the messaging that you're putting out, always being at the forefront of people's minds, always being relevant, because we live in an age that is, today it's everything just evolves at such a rapid speed, and you constantly have to be up to date with everything that's going on all the time. And so it's a very fast industry to be in, and it is extremely hard to keep up with everything at all times. And so it's very draining to like be in as well. And when I started out doing what I'm doing now and being the person that I am today are two complete polar opposites. When I started out working for myself, I was also with my ex-partner, and I used to sit in the corner, rock myself, and cry from anxiety because I was like, I'm not cut out to do this. I can't do all the rejection and like I'm never good enough. And it's like all these things, and I just don't know how to keep going. And now you have to build such a tough shell and be so secure and safe in who you are.
What have you done to find this, this resilience for relentless pursuit of your dreams?
I've done a lot of inner work with myself. And funnily enough, it hasn't really come around like the business side of things. It's come around like my personal side of things, of my insecurities and the trauma that I went through growing up, and all these different things that I have been through my whole life. Working through that trauma and my self-worth, I've been able to apply then to the business side of things, and being able to know that I'm good enough and I'm whole enough in who I am and how I show up. And I might not be everyone's cup of tea, and I'm not meant to be everyone's cup of tea. No, we're not all meant to be the same, and that's okay, but it doesn't make me less of a person. It doesn't make me less worthy of anything. And just because I get a rejection from one brand doesn't mean that I'm not good enough, or I'm not good at my job, or whatever it is. It just means that I wasn't right for that brief, or I wasn't right for that client, right? You can really look at it more from an objective kind of mind, and you don't get so emotionally attached to it.
Almost looking at it like an external person looking in.
Yes, exactly. You got to try to see the excitement in, well, it's really exciting that I don't know what's coming up, right? Because there is so much opportunity coming to you at all times, as long as you just stay open to it.
Got to be open.
Yes, exactly.
So you describe yourself as a solo entrepreneur, and I was just wondering if you wouldn't mind talking us through what that entails and what a day in the life of Caroline looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm a kind of solo entrepreneur now. I do come from a background of having been in digital marketing and very senior positions for a good kind of 10 or 12 years of my life before I kind of turned into working for myself. And I've been doing that for close to 6 years now. What I do on a daily basis is, in essence, working with different brands that really sit within the wellness and health category. And I've obviously got an Instagram, which is where most of my work sits. So, like I said, I work with different brands on their offerings, whether it's like a product or a service that obviously also aligns with my values and like what I find really important in order to essentially live your best and happiest and healthiest life. So I come up with creative concepts for them and then I create content and put onto my Instagram. And a day in my life is very different, which is also why this was kind of a really appealing way for me to live my life and kind of sharing my personal life, but from a business perspective as well. I never intended my Instagram to be what it is today. It was just meant to be like a hobby and like a sideline thing. And then it just kind of grew over the years. And like I said, now I've done it pretty much full time for 6 years. So a day for me is very, very different. But one of the things for me that's really important to me is blocking out my mornings because that's really where I ground myself and I allow myself the time and space to fill my own cup before I need to be able to show up for other people as well. So my days start pretty much between 5 and 5:30 in the mornings, and then I'll train, I'll meditate, I'll go for a walk, I'll have a coffee, I'll catch up with friends and like connect with other human beings. And then I roll into my day pretty much around like 8:30, and that will consist of anything from coming up with creative concepts and creative briefs to brands, like working together with different brands. It'll be attending events or connecting with like new people that can kind of like level me up as well, that I can help as well. Um, Another thing as well during my day is that I'll always carve out in the middle of the day for another block of healing. So I always try to incorporate healing into my world. So it'll be like an infrared sauna, or it'll be like a walk, it'll be a meditation, it'll be sitting outside in the sunshine, it'll be listening to a podcast or or reading to a piece of my book. I always make sure that I'm growing and learning and really getting that into my day. Yeah, I kind of like sit down. I'm pretty much on my phone 24/7, which is not a healthy habit, but I am always on my phone. My job is 24/7, 365 days a year. Public holidays and vacations and holidays doesn't really exist in my world. You have to really love doing, if you are someone that is on Instagram and basically your life is your income in some sort of way, you really, really got to love what you're doing in order to be able to consistently show up every single day, not just for yourself, but also for other people that are in some way reliant on you. And I think that's the community that I've created as well, is that, a lot of people, I have a lot of really intimate conversations with a lot of people every single day, and they are to some extent, reliant on also having the support from me with different things that they're going through at different times of their lives. So that's kind of, in essence, my life or my day.
It does feel like your days are very big.
Yeah.
Now, also, as someone who maybe only knows you through your Instagram, it may appear like you are a creature of habit. And I just wanted to know, is having a really structured routine for you really critical for like you having success and also your mental health?
If I don't have that, am not myself. My morning routine starts with waking up and having a moment of gratitude and then diving straight into my meditation. And if I do not do that, which rarely, rarely, rarely happens, but I do not feel like myself if I don't have my meditation in the morning and if I don't go and move my body. I'm a big believer in energy and that we are all energy. And so when I wake up in the morning, I need to shift that energy that I've been building up overnight as well. And so I do that through conscious movement in the morning and having my conscious morning routine as well. And that really sets me up for my day. When I do not do that, I don't feel like I'm properly in touch with myself, and I feel like I'm out of my body. Like I can't connect the two. So for me, a morning routine is something that I would recommend for anyone that is trying to live a conscious life as well. That's really where I feel like you can move the needle as well with starting out your day right every single day.
Absolutely. And as someone who used to be a marketing executive working full time for another organization, do you feel like becoming a solo entrepreneur has really helped you achieve that balance in your life? Like, I know you are a Libran, so
Yeah,
balance and harmony is probably something that you strive for on a,
yeah.
a minute by minute basis. So do you reckon that's really helped? And that was probably like a big decision in changing career path?
Yeah, definitely. I found it extremely hard to have a work life balance. And, I've got a lot of friends that are entrepreneurs, but I also have a lot of friends that do work for companies and organizations, right? And they do go into an office every single day. And one of the biggest things that I hear from them is it's so hard to have a work life balance. It's hard to carve out time for themselves because essentially they're on someone else's schedule, right? They don't set their day-to-day life, or at least not from Monday to Friday. They have to fit into someone else's routine, so it's really hard. And so for me, that was definitely a big part of why I wanted to step out of that kind of rat race of working for someone else, because I never felt like I could get the balance right, and I was a deeply unhappy human being at the end of it working for someone else, and it didn't work for me at that point in time. Yeah.
I did want to give you a massive congratulations because I saw recently that you finally become an Australian citizen after 12 years. Congratulations. How did
Thank you
that
so much.
feel?
I mean, it feels so surreal. Like you kind of forget about it until someone like mentioned it to me. But I'm very kind of patriotic about Australia as well. So for me, it like meant a really, really big deal. I never moved here wanting um to not absolutely immerse myself into becoming an Australian. Like I was never like, I'm just here for like borrowed time or whatever. I was like, no, like I feel Australian. I want to be Australian. I want to make it official. I want to know about the history. I want to have a passport. I want to, if I ever have kids, I want to pass that on to my kids as well. So I'm very proud of being Danish, but I'm also extremely proud of being Australian as well. So for me, it was just like, I don't know, just it it made me feel like I belonged somewhere. Um,
Oh, that's
I'm
sweet.
getting
Oh,
emotional talking about this because I think I told myself I've lived in Australia for pretty much like 12 years now. And I told myself when I left Denmark that I wasn't running away. But being home this time now, I know that I was running away. And I didn't want to be the person that I was back then. I didn't want to be part of the life that I had back then. And I think
who was Caroline in Denmark?
well, Caroline in Denmark was like a shell of a human. I wasn't like I was existing, but I wasn't living my life. I was deep into, starting like kind of like an eating disorder. I was extremely, extremely depressed. I was to sometimes like I was suicidal. Like I was very down in the dumps. And you know, on paper, I was living the perfect life, right? I just bought an apartment when I turned 18. Like I was working two jobs, got great grades, was finishing my bachelor, had great friends, was out every weekend, but it was such a toxic life. Like I was numbing my pain with alcohol, I was numbing my pain with having sex with random guys every single weekend. I was searching for all this love in all these external things that could validate me that I couldn't give myself, or that I didn't feel like I was getting from my parents. And so, there was this nudge at some point. I'd never even been to Australia before. And suddenly I was just like, I'm selling my apartment and I'm moving to Australia. And my mum was like, you can't do that. And I was like, watch me. And I literally finished my bachelor, packed up my whole life, sold everything in my apartment, got rid of my apartment, bought a one-way ticket down here with like 20 kilos of luggage. And I now know that back then I knew that I was destined for something bigger and greater, but I didn't know what it was. All I knew somehow intuitively within me was that what I knew that I could find, I wasn't going to find where I was at, or in the state that I was at, in the country I was in at that point in time. And so I just allowed myself to be free and go searching for it.
When you went home this time, like, after a few years, I would imagine, thanks COVID,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
why was this trip back home so different?
It was so different because, well, first of all, I hadn't seen my family for 3 years because of COVID, being in a long-term relationship and came out of COVID being broken up, and so it was this massive overhaul of, like, who the fuck am I? Like, outside of COVID, outside of a long-term relationship, like, I completely lost myself in the relationship and every single bit of my identity. This trip was almost like a bit of like an eat, pray, love, but there was just a lot of wine incorporated into it as well and good times.
Well, that's important.
That is important because balance. Um, but I kind of went home and I was so secure in who I am today as a person, how I show up, um, having worked through so much trauma, and also being able to go home to my family and acknowledging that they are who they are and I cannot change people and it's not my responsibility to change people. And when I started accepting that a long time ago, it allowed me to let go of so much grief for the childhood that I never felt like I got, which everyone deserves to have, but I just didn't get it. And there was so much freedom in accepting that what's in the past is in the past and what's happened has happened and I cannot change that. All I can change is be here in the moment and I can change my future for the better and I can allow people to be who they are as long as I also stand strong in knowing who I am.
You don't have to go into detail, but would you mind kind of just touching on what aspects of your childhood that you felt were kind of lacking, I guess?
So essentially what I felt like was lacking from my childhood was that my mum kind of, I would say, fell into really deep depression from the divorce, even though she initiated it. And so I become my mum's mum at the age of 9. So I was the emotional caretaker of my mum from when I was 9, pretty much up until I was late into my teens and I could start kind of having my own life and not being home. So I essentially felt like I was emotionally neglected and abandoned from the age of 9. I wasn't given the tools on how to regulate my own emotions. And I also come from a family that has got very high expectations and want my mum expects perfectionism at all times. And it's extremely hard to live under that. And that was essentially how a lot of my patterns, especially like an eating disorder, also developed because I was always my entire family always commented a lot on my weight, you know. Either I was too big, I was too small. I was too muscly, I was too lean. I've been brought up to be extremely hard on myself and be a perfectionist at all times. And that is still something that I struggle with today of like letting go of having to be perfect in all aspects of my life.
I've always admired how openly you speak about some of the things you struggled with in regards to disordered eating, your mental health, your relationships, etc. What are some of the big life altering moments that helped these things to manifest in your life later on?
Look, there was a really big kind of event that's really stands out to me. I had a I had a boyfriend when I was at the age of kind of like 14 or something and we broke up and at that time, you know, that's your one true love and you're going to live together for the rest of your life. You're never going to love anyone else. Oh, young love, it's so sweet.
Until it's not.
But essentially we broke up. No, it's terrible, terrible. Essentially, we broke up, and I just spiraled downwards because I was living out my what I didn't get in my childhood in my relationships, and so being abandoned and rejected was like my parents' divorce and them leaving me all over again. It was just a big of a trauma, right? So when he kind of left me, I just could not eat. I was not hungry. I just had no appetite, and I think I lost like a good 8 kilos or something in the space of like a month or something like that. And I got so tiny, and he met me on the street, and he was like, "Oh my god, like." you look amazing. Like, what have you done to yourself? And I was like, I'm just so sad. Like, I haven't been able to eat. We got back together again because he found me so attractive. And that was like the seed that was sowed again on top of everything else, right? On top of always being told that I was never right or whatever. So I was like, okay, well, here we are. If I just do this and I can control how I look, so I can control my food, I can control how much I eat, then this person will love me. And if he loves me, then it means that I don't have to feel heartache and abandonment and rejection again. And then I've got it nailed. So this is what I'm going to do. And so that was essentially the start of, my eating disorder, disordered eating patterns that then ebbed and flowed over the next pretty much like 15 years from when I was 15, right? So that was definitely like a big kind of thing that really still stands out to me today of like the start of, the disordered relationship that I've had with myself and like my physical body, like a lot in the past.
And how do you feel about your body today?
I feel pretty good with my body today. I would be lying if I would say that I love my body and I think it's perfect and I just look myself in the mirror and I'm like, you're just a babe. But then I'm also like, who does that? I don't know. Like, I also would feel like I'm maybe slightly narcissistic if I would just look myself in the mirror and be like, wow, you're just like really great. No, I've learned to love my body in a different way. I've learned to appreciate my body for what it's done for me over the years. And so I think I've shifted my perception and the narrative that I have around my body. And so I have to find gratitude in it that my physical body has been so strong that it has carried me through today and that I live with minimal side effects of everything that my body has been through. Um, but of course, I have days where, especially when I have my period, right? Like I feel water retention and I probably gain some weight and I feel like I'm fluidy and I'm PMSing and I don't feel necessarily super great in my body, right? Does it mean that I'm not going to go down to the beach in a bikini? No, it doesn't. And then I have other days where I feel like really great, but I feel like essentially I'm in a pretty good space most of the time where I can look at myself and I actually genuinely can feel like I am a beautiful human being. My good heart also shines through my physical body as well, and that makes me
Appreciate you holistically.
exactly, yeah.
I do love the whole emotional mastery of it, right? Because it sounds like you've had to do a great deal of work mentally
Yeah.
to combat this. So when some byproducts of your eating disorder rears its head now, you've worked really
Yeah.
hard, you feel like you've kind of come out the other end, but every now and then, when it rears its head, what are the steps you take to get it back in line?
So I make sure that I keep up like my therapy sessions. And sometimes if I'm going through like a rough period of time, I might do them like once a week instead of like every fortnight. So it's really important for me to keep up my therapy sessions, which helped me a lot because someone is not emotionally attached to your problems and can give you an objective opinion about it as well and help you navigate through that, which I think is really good. And oftentimes, well, most of us human beings live in our heads. And so we create stories that are not really there. Being able to talk it out it just lifts a weight off your heart and like your shoulders as well.
Are you vulnerable with your close friends? Like when you're around them, if you're having a
Oh,
bad day, are you like, oh, I'm having a bad day, I feel.
yeah, 100%. And this is also something my friendships have changed drastically over the last few years. I do not keep superficial friendships. Like my friendships are extremely raw and honest and vulnerable. So that's like another thing. My friends will know when I'm not like in a good headspace. Like I'll be so open with them. Like I'll even sit and cry on the street. Like if you're in Bondi, you will definitely find me at Skittle Lane on Kahlua Street, probably crying over a coffee at one point, like in your lifetime, if you ever see me. Because I don't have an issue like crying on like open street and stuff like that as well. It's just, I used to think that I used to hate being so sensitive, like, but one of my best girlfriends really made me love it. And she really made me see that it's one of the most beautiful parts of me.
This was actually one of my questions about people making assumptions about you because yeah, you're blonde and tanned and beautiful, and people might not
Hmm.
realize that you do a lot of work on a deeper level. So, what are some of the coping mechanisms then, or how do you effectively communicate that you're not just superficial?
Yeah, it's I think that really comes, my content on Instagram is very often pretty pictures, deeper captions, right? So a lot of my, I think, emotions and my vulnerability and the messaging really lies within the captions and the um when I tried to keep like a pretty good ratio of 30% sponsored content, 70% organic content, and a lot of my organic content will also be me sharing parts of myself, of difficulties through my life, and trying to inspire people to see that there is an there is a getting out on the other side and being able to live a beautiful, fulfilled life as well, even though you come from a really traumatic past. So for me, that's really where I try to share my heart and try to share the essence of who I truly am. And oftentimes it's, with the shift of content being a lot more video based, I have struggled because
Can't get the words out.
exactly, I am a writer, I'm not a speaker, right? I do my best work when I can write, and I it flows when I write. Sometimes it comes from my soul when I write. It goes into the words and it just comes out, and I don't have the same feeling when I speak.
Mhm.
So sometimes I can walk away from conversations where I can sometimes be a bit hard on myself and feel like I didn't show them the true essence of who I am because I'm a writer, I'm not a speaker.
Yeah. That must,
So
yeah.
that's something that I'm trying to work on as well, of getting that part of myself out when I talk instead of it just being into words. Yeah.
So, would you say that's almost like a daily ritual for you now, like purging the inner
Yeah.
sanctum?
Yeah, absolutely. Like writing is just so good, Sometimes it can literally be nothing, but it's good for you on so many levels, like on a subconscious level as well. The things that you get out that you don't know that you actually need to get out. And most people don't journal, but just it just start, like, just doesn't matter if you just write doodles or whatever, but it starts coming like after a while, and it's like a decompressor. It's like very deloading, like on your system as well.
Now, we have definitely run over. So, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. But I like to finish every chat with a few fast questions. Now, the first one is three things any person can do today to start living a life by design.
Okay, three things. I kind of feel like I already kind of touched a little bit on these. One of the things is like meditation, because I think it's like so important. Exercising, like, I mean, it doesn't mean you don't need to exercise for like a physical appearance, but it's so important to find something to live in integrity also with the energetic responsibility you have for your physical body here on earth as well, and it moves stagnant energy as well, so it's beneficial for so many different things. um Three, I think, make sure you surround yourself with like great people. Like, great people around you makes this life worth living. Like, we are designed to we are we're human beings who want to connect with other human beings, right? And with other souls as well. We want to have a connection. So make sure you connect with amazing people that uplift you, inspire you, and want the best for you every
I love
single
that. I
day.
think that last point is very poignant. Now, what is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh, this was like the one that I touched on a bit earlier, but it's very simple. No one is coming to save you. You're the hero you're waiting
We're
for.
writing our own scripts in our own film, as Vanessa Buddha would say.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
if there's any kind of advice you could give for someone who's starting their own post trauma healing process,
Take it slow. You're not going to heal within a day. It's committing to long-term work. There's no deadline. Um, there's no straight arrow of like how healing works. It's going to be like one big doodle. It's two steps. A lot of the time you'll feel like it's one step forward, two steps back, and then suddenly one day you'll look back and you'll realize that you actually got over the hump that you were like focusing on for so long. And yeah, it's just slowly but surely. And then the more you start learning the tools to manage yourself every single day, the easier it becomes. But it's just slow and steady wins the race. Trauma work is not something you want to fast track or like speed up, and you can't, because you miss things. And when we miss things, it just comes back around in like another situation or another lesson or another human being again. So
Next question. What are 5 products you can't live without? And they can be supplements, they can be beauty,
okay.
they can be whatever you want.
Yeah, okay. It's probably going to be like very specific kind of like products. So, GI Ultimate Repair from Level Up Health, completely healing my gut. It's peptides, cannot live without it. Not sponsored, not anything. Literally has saved me. My Apple Watch, cannot live without it. Monitors my sleep, my steps, like just keeps me happy. Can take calls, messages, everything. It's so good. My Ole Henriksen Banana Bright Eye Cream, because I would not look awake if I didn't put that on in the morning. I get hair extensions because that makes me feel more feminine. So Great Legs hair extensions, love that because it makes me feel girly. And then my Frank Green emotional support bottles and my Keep Cups, because anyone that drinks coffee every single day needs to get over themselves if they don't have a Keep Cup.
You heard it here first, everyone. That is Caroline Groth is talking how it's going to be. And lastly, the most important question of this whole chat, well, maybe not, but how do you stay wild, Caroline Groth, at home, at life, love, career, everything?
Oh, that's such a hard question because I'm a Libra. So like I feel like my whole life purpose is finding balance in everything, right? But it's actually interesting because the other day I just had this thought pop into my head and I was like, I wonder what my name actually means. And my name, which I think is quite funny because there is no chance that my parents would have looked this up before they named me. My name means strong, free woman. And I feel like my whole essence has been breaking free from the chains that have held me down my whole life. And so for me, staying wild means staying free, right? Free to be who I truly am, like unapologetically me. And if people don't like me, that's okay. Because, like I said before, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I'm not going to be, but I'm me. And I try to be the best human being and I try to be kind to others. And that's the best that I can do in life. And that means freedom to me. To me, and being wild to me is just being true to myself.
I love that so much. I can't believe that's what your name means. I feel like it was destiny that you've like come into my life with this. Thank you so much for your time and for letting us run over because there was too many great things to talk about and I can't wait to share this. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was such a great
Thank
chat. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you for tuning in to Wildfemmes. We hope that you enjoyed that chat and be sure to follow us on our journey over on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook and Spotify. Stay wild.